The rock spoke before it moved. That was the only way Darren Holt could describe it later, a low grinding sound. Like something old and heavy deciding it had waited long enough. He felt it in his boots first, then in his knees, then in the scanner he was holding. The readout. Blurred, he stopped walking. He was 3 days into a solo mapping survey of the Voron Canyon system. The planet was quiet mostly. Gray cliffs, orange dust, air that tasted like iron. The Galactic Council had flagged Voron as restricted territory, Dragon Clan, sovereign land. But geological surveys were still permitted in the lower canyon zones, as long as no contact was made. Darren had done this kind of work for 7 years without incident. He was good at not making contact with things. The scanner beeped. He looked down. A heat signature, small and unstable, about 40 meters northwest. Not geological. The reading was dropping slowly but steadily. Something was alive. And losing warmth. He stood there for a moment. Protocol was clear. Non-geological anomalies in restricted zones were to be logged, tagged, and left alone. He had a radio on his belt. He could call it in and walk away and be back at base camp before dark. He started walking northwest. The canyon narrowed into a side passage. The walls were dark and wet from some underground seep. His boots found loose stones and he moved carefully, watching the scanner, watching the heat signature grow closer. When he turned the last corner, he stopped. A dragon hatchling lay pinned beneath a collapsed shelf of rock. It was small, maybe the size of a large dog, pale gold scales dull where they pressed against the stone. One wing was bent under its body at a bad angle. Its eyes were open, amber, wide, and it was watching him. It did not hiss. It did not try to move. It just watched him the way a very small thing watches the world when it has run out of options. Darren clipped his scanner to his belt and got on his radio. Base, this is Holt. I have a non-geological heat signature in Grid 7 North. It is a dragon hatchling, juvenile, pinned under rock fall. Appears injured. Static, then his supervisor's voice, calm and firm. Copy that, Holt. Log it in. Withdraw, do not approach. Copy. He clicked off the radio and did not withdraw. He walked to the rock shelf and crouched beside it. The hatchling's eyes tracked him the whole way. Up close he could see its sides moving, shallow, fast breaths. The shelf across its back legs was heavy, not impossible. He got both hands under the nearest edge and felt the weight of it. His back disagreed with this plan. Immediately, he adjusted his grip, bent his knees, and lifted. The rock moved 3 inches. He held it, slid 1 boot forward, held it some more. The hatchling made a small sound, not a cry, just a soft exhale, like something that had been held tight suddenly had a little more room. He set the rock down slowly to his right, off its back legs, and crouched again. The second piece was worse, heavier, and sitting at an angle that meant he had to get low to get under it. His hands found no good grip. He tried 4 different positions before he found one that worked, and by then his palms were bleeding from the rough stone edges. He did not notice until he wiped his face and left a red smear on his jaw. It took him 40 minutes. He moved 7 pieces of rock in total. His drone, Niner, hovered nearby and said nothing useful except structural warnings he already knew. When the last piece came free, the hatchling did not run. It lay still and looked at him. Darren sat back on his heels, breathing hard, and looked back. He unclipped the water pack from his belt, a small pressurized unit, standard issue, and set it on the ground in front of the hatchling. The hatchling stared at it, then it extended its neck, very slowly, and drank. Niner made a sound, a different kind of sound. Multiple large life-form signatures, the drone said, airborne, converging. Darren looked up. The canyon rim above him had gone dark, not from clouds, Something was landing up. There, multiple somethings, each one large enough to block the light just by moving. Through it. Then the canyon wall to his left made a sound like a mountain clearing its throat, and began to come down. Darren did not think about it. He was already holding the hatchling. When the wall went, he went with it, but down, not away. He pulled the small creature against his chest and curled his body over it, the way you do when there is no time for anything else, and you are the only thing between something small and something very large and very fast. The rocks hit. Everything went away. The Dragon Kings did not speak when they landed. There were 3 of them. Drakkar came down first, black-scaled, each wing beat, pressing a small storm into the canyon dust. Sova followed crimson, fast, her landing harder than necessary because she was not thinking about landing. She was thinking about what was at the bottom of that rubble. The third, Ron, touched down last and said nothing, gray eyes moving over the scene with the slow attention of someone who was already trying to understand it. They had flown the full distance in under 6 minutes when the alert came through. The canyon monitoring system had flagged a life sign disruption. It had also flagged a second life sign, human, survey core equipment signature, already present. Before the collapse, Sova had not waited for the full report. The rubble was not deep. Drakkar moved the largest pieces in 2 sweeps of his arm. What he uncovered first was a human male, medium build, survey core uniform, curled over the shape beneath him like a shell over something soft. His back was to the debris. His arms were wrapped around something, blood on his hands dark against the gray stone, ribs moving but barely. Sova made a sound low in her throat and stepped forward. Kel was beneath him, unharmed, both wings intact. She had her face pressed against the human's chest, and she was asleep, or very close to it, with the comfortable looseness of a creature that does not know it was almost lost. None of the 3 Dragon Kings said anything for a long moment. Ron was the first to speak, quietly, almost to himself. He covered her with his body. Drakkar crouched. He looked at the human's hands, looked at the old blood on the rocks nearby, not from the collapse, from before it, dried and dark from the work of moving stone by hand. He looked at the water pack on the ground 3 meters away, empty. He stood up. "Take him to the hold," he said. Sova looked at him. "He could be a spy," she said, "a scout for something larger." "He could be," Drakkar said. "Carry him carefully. He has broken ribs." The clan healers were not given a choice about who they treated that evening. They worked without complaint. They had opinions privately about treating a human in the clan hold, but Drakkar's instruction had been clear, and the elder's word did not require discussion. The human was unconscious for 4 hours. During that time, Kel did not leave him. She sat beside the low platform where he lay, and when a healer tried to move her to her mother, she made a sound that was small and surprisingly firm, and the healer decided it was not worth the argument. Sova watched from the doorway. She watched her daughter sitting beside this human, as though she had always known him, as though he was a known and trusted thing in her world, and she felt something in her chest that she did not have a clean word for. Ron found his way to Drakkar's chamber. He had, before taking his seat on the Dragon Council, spent 40 years as an academic. He had published 6 recognized volumes on cross-species behavioral analysis. He had a reputation for being precise to the point of coldness, which was mostly accurate. He sat down across from Drakkar and said, "The drone recorded everything." Drakkar looked at him. 43 minutes of footage, Ron said. He moved the rocks by hand, no tools. His equipment log shows he had a sonic cutter on his belt, never used. He chose Manual removal to avoid vibration risk near a living creature. He knew what he was doing. He made the deliberate choice to use his hands instead. Drakkar said nothing. He was also under direct radio instruction to withdraw, Ron continued. He acknowledged the instruction and then immediately began removing the rocks. He did not argue with his commanding officer. He did not try to explain. He acknowledged. And then did the other thing anyway. "What is your conclusion?" Drakkar asked. Ron was quiet for a moment. "I do not have a complete conclusion yet. What I know is that humans have a known pattern of protective behavior toward young and vulnerable creatures. It is documented, but most scholarship treats it as theoretical or limited to their own species. This suggests the behavior is broader and more instinctive than we have given credit for." Drakkar looked at the ceiling. "He did not know we were watching," he said. "No," Ron said. "He believed he was alone." Another silence. "That is the part that matters," Drakkar said. When Darren Holt opened his eyes, the ceiling above him was carved black stone, lit by deep orange vents in the far wall. He was lying on something flat. His ribs felt like three of them had opinions about the situation. His hands were wrapped. He turned his head. Three dragons were looking at him, large, ancient-looking, the kind of creatures that made the word large seem like an understatement. And pressed against his left side, warm and quietly breathing, was a small pale gold hatchling with amber eyes. He looked at her for a moment. Then he looked at the three dragon kings. "Is she all right?" he asked. His first question had been about Kel. Not "where am I," not "what are you going to do to me," not any of the things Sova had expected. He had opened his eyes in a room full of dragon kings, and the first words out of his mouth were about her daughter. She filed this away and said nothing. Drakkar answered him. "The hatchling is unharmed. She has not left your side since you were brought here." The human Darren Holt, Survey Corps, 7-year service record, 0 prior incidents, looked down at Kel. Something moved across his face that Ron would later describe in his notes as quiet relief expressed without performance. Then he looked back up at the three of them and said, "Okay, thank you." Drakkar studied him. "You understand where you are?" "Dragon Clan hold, sovereign territory." A pause. "I'm not sure which clan." "That information is not yours yet," Drakkar said. "Do you know why you are here? And not outside under the open sky where we found you?" A longer pause this time. The human seemed to be thinking carefully. "Because I touched your hatchling without permission. Because I was in restricted territory. Because you want to understand what I was doing." He looked down at his bandaged hands. "And because I couldn't walk out on my own anyway." Ron made a small sound, something like appreciation. Drakkar moved closer. He did not do this to intimidate, or not only for that. He did it because he wanted to see the human's eyes when he answered the next question. "Walk me through your reasoning," Drakkar said. "From the moment you detected the life sign, every decision, every why." Darren Holt walked through it. He spoke plainly. He said he detected the heat signature, saw it dropping, investigated. He said he found the hatchling pinned and injured. He said his protocol was to withdraw and log it. "But you did not withdraw," Drakkar said. "No." "Why?" The human was quiet for a moment. Then, "It didn't feel like a real option." Ron leaned forward slightly. "Define real." Darren looked at him. "I mean, yes, it was technically an option. I could have walked away, but the practical weight of it wasn't there. She was hurt and she was trapped, and I was the only one who could do anything about it. Walking away didn't feel like a choice I could actually make and still be okay with myself afterward." "Self-perception was the deciding factor," Ron said, mostly to himself, writing something quickly on a data pad with one claw. "Why did you use your hands?" Sova asked. She had not spoken until now. Darren looked at her. He seemed to understand the way prey animals sometimes understand exactly which one in a group is the dangerous one. Sonic Cutter would have vibrated the surrounding rock in an unstable shelf system that could have brought more down. Manual removal was slower but safer for the animal underneath. "For Kel," Sova said. "Yes, for her." Sova held his gaze a moment longer. She did not say anything else. Drakkar continued. "When the wall collapsed, you had time to move away. Our analysis of the footage confirms this. You had approximately 2 seconds. Why did you not run?" Darren thought about this one the longest. He rubbed the back of his neck with one bandaged hand, careful of the wrapping. "I already had hold of her," he said finally. "When the wall started to come down, I was already holding her, and letting go didn't really enter my head. I just went down with her, covered what I could." Silence. It was a deep silence, not uncomfortable but weighted like the air before weather. Ron set down his data pad. "You are aware that at full maturity, the creature you shielded will be large enough to destroy a ground transport vehicle with one strike." "I figured something like that, yeah." "That did not factor into your decision." "She was the size of a dog and she was scared," Darren said. "No, it didn't factor in." Ron picked his data pad back up. He was writing faster now. Drakkar stepped back. He folded his wings in a deliberate gesture, one that lowered his profile, made him slightly less like a wall and slightly more like a person having a conversation. He had not done this with an outsider in many years. "You violated your orders," he said. "You trespassed. You made contact with Clan Young without permission. These things carry weight." "I know," Darren said. "Do you regret any of them?" Another long pause, honest this time, not calculated. "I regret the trespass. I regret putting my survey mission at risk. I don't regret the rest of it." He looked at Kel again. She had shifted in her sleep, pressing her nose against his arm. "I'd do it again." Drakkar looked at Sova. Sova looked at Ron. Ron was looking at his data pad and looked up and nodded once, the small specific nod of a person who has just confirmed a hypothesis they were not quite sure was real. "You will remain here as a guest," Drakkar said. "Not a prisoner. The distinction matters under our law. You will have quarters, food, and reasonable freedom of movement within the hold. Your communications with your ship are suspended until the clan has reached a formal determination." Darren accepted this. No argument, no complaint. "Can I ask one question?" he said. Drakkar waited. "What's her name?" Sova looked at him for a moment, then quietly, "Kel." Darren looked down at the small pale gold hatchling sleeping against his arm. "Kel," he said softly, trying the weight of it. Kel did not wake up, but her tail curled slightly, like a reflex, like something in her sleep that recognized its own name being spoken by a voice it had already decided to trust. By the third day, the clan workers had stopped watching him with their hands ready. They still watched him. He was a human in a dragon clan hold, which was not something that happened, and the watching was reasonable, but the readiness had come out of it. He was just a man who walked slowly because his ribs were still healing, who ate whatever the healers brought him without complaint, and who spent most of his free time sitting somewhere quiet with a pale gold hatchling draped across his legs like she had always lived there. Kel was 3 months out of the egg. She did not understand the concept of a guest or a stranger. She understood warm and still and not a threat, and Darren Holt was all 3 of those things, so she followed him everywhere. She also brought him things. A rock that was, to all observation, a completely ordinary rock. A strip of something dried and leathery that turned out to be old Food storage wrapping, which Darren accepted and set aside politely. A live beetle that escaped immediately across the floor. Darren caught it reflexively, quickly, with one cupped hand, and set it near the wall where it found a crack and vanished. Kel watched the crack for a long time afterward, possibly hoping for a sequel. Ron came to find him on the fourth day. He sat across from Darren in the lower common passage and set his data pad between them like a peace offering. He was, of all the Dragon Kings, the most direct about his curiosity. He did not pretend it was something else. "I want to understand your species more completely," he said. "I have spent 40 years studying you from records and published accounts. You are the first human I have spoken to for more than 5 minutes." Darren looked at the data pad. "What do you want to know?" What followed was 2 hours. Ron asked about human children, how long they were vulnerable, how adults responded to vulnerability in others, whether the protective behavior extended beyond family groups. Darren answered as well as he could. He was not a scientist. He spoke from observation and personal experience. Ron seemed to find this more useful than academic language. At one point Ron said, "Your historical record suggests that humans will sometimes die for strangers, not often but consistently. Every culture, every era, there is always a documented occurrence." "Yeah," Darren said. "Can you explain the mechanism?" Darren thought about it. "Not really. It's not calculation, it's more like when it happens. The question isn't whether, it's just how fast." Ron wrote something down and said nothing for a moment. Then, "That is either the most irrational behavioral pattern I have ever encountered, or it is the most consistent one. I have not decided which." "Could be both," Darren said. On the 5th day the lower pipe burst. It was a deep geothermal feed, part of the hold's internal heat system. The pressure valve failed, and a section of pipe in the lower maintenance corridor gave way, sending a jet of hot steam into a junction room and flooding the floor. Clan workers moved fast. 3 of them were already on it when Darren came down the passage and saw what was happening. Nobody asked him for help. He looked at the burst section. He looked at the workers. He looked at the layout of the pipe junction and saw that the secondary shutoff was on the far wall, behind the steam jet, and that nobody was able to reach it without getting badly burned. He went back to his quarters, came back 60 seconds later with the thermal wrap from his emergency kit, standard Survey Corps issue, reflective, rated for high heat. He wrapped both arms, pulled it over his head, walked through the edge of the steam jet to the secondary shutoff, and closed it. The steam stopped. He unwrapped his arms. Small burns on his left wrist where the wrap had not covered fully. He looked at them, decided they were not important, and looked at the pipe. One of the clan workers was staring at him. "It needs a new pressure sleeve," Darren said. "Do you have the parts? I can help with the fitting if you walk me through your system." They spent 6 hours fixing the pipe. Darren learned the Dragon Clan holds geothermal junction system by watching and copying. He asked questions in simple language and remembered the answers. By the end, the clan worker beside him was explaining things without being asked, the way people do when they realize the person next to them is genuinely paying attention. Sova heard about it before evening. She came to find Darren where he sat in the outer passage, rewrapping his left wrist. Kel was asleep across his boots, which made standing up complicated. Sova sat down across from him. This was new. In 5 days she had not sat near him voluntarily. "You didn't have to do that," she said. "The pipe was going to cause damage if it stayed open longer," Darren said. "That is not your problem to solve." He finished wrapping his wrist. "I was standing right there." She looked at him for a long moment, then she said, "Do you have children?" The question surprised him. He showed it. No. Do you understand what Kel is to me? He was quiet for a moment. He looked at Kel, sleeping the boneless sleep of a creature with no concerns at all. I think so, he said. Not completely, but enough. Sova said nothing for a while. The geothermal vents in the far wall breathed there. Slow orange light across everything. She has not left you, Sova said finally. Since the canyon, she has not left your side for more than an hour. I've noticed, Darren said. I hope that's okay. Sova looked at her daughter, looked at the human, looked at the way Kel's small body rose and fell against his boots with the comfort of a thing that had chosen where it wanted to be and had no doubts about the choice. She stood, she did not say anything else, but when she left the passage her steps were quieter than when she came in, and she did not look back like someone walking away from a threat. On the 6th day, a young clan member named Vord, adolescent, broad-shouldered, the kind of young that has not yet learned the difference between confidence and noise, found Darren alone in the outer corridor and called him a trespasser and a spy in front of 6 other clan members. Darren did not flinch, did not raise his voice. He looked at Vord and said, "You might be right about the first one. You're wrong about the second." Vord held the stare for a moment, then looked away. Darren kept walking. The 6 watching clan members were quiet for a long time. Drakkar, who had been at the end of that corridor for reasons unrelated to the confrontation, watched the humans back until he turned the corner and was gone. Then he went to write the summons for the 7th day. The formal chamber had not been opened in 11 years. Darren did not know this. He followed the escort through the hold's deep corridors, past the geothermal vents and the carved walls, and the passages that opened into larger spaces than he expected, and when the great door came into view he stopped for just a moment because it was, simply, one of the largest doors he had ever seen. Kel was not allowed in. This was the one separation that had been required of her. She sat outside the door with her tail wrapped around her own feet and watched Darren walk through with the focused expression of a creature engaged in silent protest. Inside, the full senior clan was assembled. Darren did not count them. There were too many, and they lined the walls from floor to high ceiling, dark-scaled in crimson and gray and colors he did not have names. For the chamber was lit by deep firewells set into the floor, and the light came up from below, which made everything look older than it already was. Drakkar stood at the center. Sova and Ron flanked him. Drakkar's voice, when he spoke, carried easily to every wall. This is a rite of accounting. Every action taken against or within the clan must be weighed and answered. The accounting is formal and the record is permanent. He looked at Darren. Do you understand? Yes, Darren said. The charges against you are as follows: trespass on Dragon Clan sovereign territory, violation of Galactic Council non-interference codes, Section 9, regarding contact with native life on restricted worlds, direct contact with clan young without the knowledge or permission of the clan. How do you answer these charges? Darren did not hesitate. Guilty, all 3. The chamber was very quiet. Drakkar waited as though expecting more. There was no more. The human had been offered a moment to explain or defend, and he had not taken it. He had simply answered the question that was asked. The counter-account, Drakkar continued, his voice unchanged. 43 minutes of manual labor at personal injury to free a clan hatchling from entrapment. The deliberate choice to risk greater physical harm in order to avoid causing further harm to the hatchling during the removal process, the shielding of that hatchling with his own body during structural collapse at full personal risk with no observable benefit to himself and no knowledge of any observer. 7 days of cooperative conduct within the hold, 2 additional acts of voluntary risk on behalf of clan members, unrequested and uncompensated. He paused. These things are also on the record. Ron stepped forward. He had his data pad, but he did not look at it. He had committed what he wanted to say to memory, the way academics do when they want people to know they mean it. What Darren Holt represents has been systematically misunderstood by the Galactic Council and by most of the wider galactic community for as long as humans have been part of it. The Council assesses human value by technology output, by military potential, by resource generation. These are measurable things, and so they measure them. A pause. They have never successfully measured this. He gestured toward Darren with one claw. There is a behavioral pattern in humans that does not follow standard survival logic. They move toward the hurt thing. They shield the small thing. They fix the broken thing not because it benefits them, but because it is broken and they are there. This pattern appears in every human culture in the historical record without exception. It has been documented and then footnoted, and then set aside because it resists quantification. He looked at the assembled clan. It should not be set aside. In 40 years of study, I have found no other species that does this as reliably, as consistently, or as instinctively as humans do. What Darren Holt did in that canyon was not exceptional behavior for a human. It was ordinary behavior. That is the point. He stepped back. Sova moved forward. She did not look at her data pad. She did not look at the assembled clan. She looked at Darren. He kept my daughter alive, she said. I have nothing else to weigh. She stepped back. The vote was not close. Drakkar let the silence sit for a moment after. Then, the charges are dismissed. By unanimous consent of the senior clan, Darren Holt of the Interstellar Survey Corps is recognized under Dragon Clan law as Warden Bonded. This is a designation of ancient standing, granted to non-dragon individuals who have demonstrated can conduct the protection of clan blood at personal cost, without obligation, and without witness. He looked at Darren directly. You will be known, any dragon in any clan system, any part of the galaxy where our law holds will know what you are. You will not be harmed under clan law, and if you are ever in danger, genuine danger, the clans will be informed. Darren stood very still. Something was happening in his face that he was not quite managing to keep controlled. I just didn't want to leave her in the rocks, he said. We know, Drakkar said. That is precisely why it matters. The great door opened. Kel came through it at speed, having apparently reached the limit of her patience, and crossed the chamber floor with the absolute confidence of a creature that does not understand formal proceedings and sees no reason to start. She hit Darren at the knee level and wrapped her neck around him. Nobody stopped her. The assembled senior clan of the Dragon Hold watched the Warden Bonded human put both arms around the hatchling and stand there in the middle of their oldest chamber, with his face pressed against the top of her head and the firewell's breath, their light across all of them. Darren's radio had been returned to him before the proceedings. It crackled now. His ship, his crew, relief so obvious it was almost noise. He answered, said he was fine, said he would explain later. At the edge of Voron's orbit, a Galactic Council diplomatic envoy was just dropping out of jump speed, 3 weeks late, prepared to negotiate the release of a survey Corps employee from hostile xenofauna. They received a formal transmission from the Dragon Clan Council instead. The human was not a hostage. He was a guest. He would leave when he was ready. Leaving took 3 more days and was harder than it had any right to be. The hold felt different on the last morning, or he felt different in it. He could not tell which. He walked the same corridors he had walked all week, and they looked. The same black stone, orange light, the smell of old rock and heat, but something had shifted in the way they received him. Workers nodded as he passed, not the cautious nod of something watching a possible threat, a different kind, the kind that meant something. Ron found him after breakfast and handed him a data core the size of a thumb. "My complete file," he said. 40 years of research on human behavioral patterns. Published and unpublished. He paused. "I need a foreword from someone with field experience rather than academic distance." Darren turned the data core over in his hand. "You want me to write the foreword to your life's work?" "I want a human to write it," Ron said. "Specifically one who did the things I have spent 40 years arguing were possible." He picked up his data pad. "I will send the formatting requirements. They are not complicated." Darren looked at him for a moment and then laughed. It came out real and full. The first full laugh in over a week, and Ron watched it with the focused attention of someone recording a primary source event. Sova came to the hold entrance alone. She did not make a speech. She reached into the fold beneath her left wing and drew out a single scale, large, deep crimson, with the particular sheen of something naturally shed rather than taken. She held it out to him. "Dragonkind does not give these to outsiders," she said. "Under clan law, you are not an outsider." She placed it in his hand. It was warm and heavier than it looked. "If you ever need it to mean something, it will mean something." He closed his hand around it. He did not say thank you because it felt like the wrong word for the size of the gesture, and she seemed to understand this because she nodded once and stepped back. Kel did not understand goodbyes. This was both easier and harder than the alternative. She did not cry. She did not cling. She simply followed him to the entrance and sat down, wrapped her tail around her feet, and looked at him with amber eyes that expected him to come back because she did not yet have a concept of the kind of leaving that doesn't. He crouched in front of her. She bumped her nose against his forehead hard enough to rock him back a little. He steadied himself and put one hand on the side of her neck against the warm pale gold scales and stayed there for a moment. Then he stood up and walked away. He did not look back, not because it did not matter, but because it mattered too much. Drakkar was the last. He was waiting at the outer gate, simply standing there. Not positioned for ceremony, not performing, just present. He did not speak when Darren reached him. He looked at him for a long moment. Then he inclined his head, slowly, deliberately, the particular angle that Darren had looked up during his second day in the hold. The formal gesture exchanged between equals under Dragon Clan protocol, not superior to subordinate, equal to equal. Darren inclined his head back, the right angle, the right depth. He had practiced it twice, quietly in his quarters. Drakkar said nothing. He stepped aside. Darren walked out. His crew received him in the shuttle bay with the controlled chaos of people who had been professionally worried for 11 days. There were questions, many questions. He answered some of them and said he would explain the rest in his report. His commanding officer's expression suggested that the report was going to be a significant document. He slept for 14 hours on the ship. When he woke up, his ribs still hurt, and Sova's scale was on the shelf beside his bunk, where he had put it before he slept. And it caught the cabin light and threw small red-orange shapes across the ceiling. The Galactic Council disciplinary hearing took place 3 weeks later. The panel was prepared. They had the charges organized: protocol violations, unauthorized contact, failure to follow direct instruction. The minimum penalty was a formal reprimand and reassignment. The maximum was considerably more than that. Before the panel chair read the determination, a transmission arrived. It was flagged as priority communication from the Dragon Clan Council formal headers. Ancient seals, the kind of document that people in chambers like this did not receive and were not quite sure how to hold. It was signed by Drakkar, Sova, and Ron. Below their seals were the seals of 17 additional clans across 4 systems. The panel chair read it, passed it to the left and the right. The room was very quiet in the way that rooms get quiet when everyone is thinking at the same speed. The document used the words honor and courage and can conduct. It stated that the individual in question had been formally adjudicated under Dragon Clan law, the oldest continuous legal system currently recognized by the Galactic Council, and had been found unanimously to have acted with the highest standard of conduct that law could name. It respectfully requested that the Council's proceedings reflect this finding. The panel chair set the document down. Darren received a formal reprimand, 1 line, the minimum possible, the kind that exists for the record and means almost nothing. 2 weeks after that, he received a new assignment. He read it twice because he thought he had misread it the first time. Interspecies liaison, Dragon Clan territories. First human ever assigned the role. Effective immediately. He sat at the small desk in his quarters on the ship and read the assignment again. Outside the porthole, space moved past in its slow, silent way. His personal comm chimed. Encrypted message, Dragon Clan security headers new. Ones unfamiliar, the kind that had been set up recently by someone who had recently decided a direct channel was necessary. He opened it. It was a voice message. Small breathing sounds, a hatchling's breathing, the particular soft rhythm of something very young and very content, then a pause, then a voice careful and slow, working through each syllable the way small creatures do when they have been practicing. Darren, I learn your name, Sova mother help me, I will see you soon. The message ended. Darren set the comm down on his desk. Outside, space was very large and very dark. And in it, spread across more distance than most people thought about, was a civilization of creatures that had just decided a single human scout was worth knowing. He picked up the data core Ron had given him. He opened a blank document. He started writing.